What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the View from the Clipper podcast. I'm your host, James Warner, and as always, joined by the wonderful Josh Sexton. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, doing well, James. Obviously, a decent enough week for the Clippers, really. The one game they do drop is the one where they're very much short-handed. So, feeling good about them. Feeling good enough to have copied you this week with the classic Clippers jersey on the wall. The eagle-eyed viewers among us may have noticed that James had that up in the last episode. I believe yours is a Q rich one, James, isn't it? Mine's
Yeah,
a CP one.
yeah. I was actually looking back at some of my earlier posts on X, and I realized I bought this after I went to my first Clippers game against the Nets in New York, and I posted it online because shout out to Hoop and Luton. I'm sure Josh, I think you know Hoop and Luton is a sort of a local basketball store in the UK where you can buy all sorts of jerseys from various years, and I managed to pick this one up. Yeah, it was around 4 to 5 years ago now. I actually posted it on X and I added Q Rich in it, and he quote retweeted that. So
Wow.
yeah, just a little knowledge nugget there. A shout out to Q Rich. But yeah, both number three jerseys. That's and red as well.
Yeah, big
And
big
both really nice ones.
Big name drop from you getting a Q Rich retweet. I was joking with you before the podcast, wasn't I? That we've finally got a CP jersey hanging in the
Yeah.
rafters here. So if it doesn't ever hang into a dome, then at least it's hanging up in my house. You can all rest assured. Maybe I'll get Chris Paul to come and do some sort of like ribbon cutting ceremony here, where he just stands in my office and helps me helps me unveil it.
I don't think he'll be best pleased with this, but I actually don't own a Chris Paul jersey, which I feel quite guilty about, and I might need to address that at some stage. But what I might start to do, especially for the viewers, because I know the listeners won't be able to see this, but I might just start switching up with some of the other ones I've got over the next few weeks. So we'll start rolling through the collection for the viewers of the pod, and the listeners will just have to tune in on YouTube to
We'll
be able to see
describe
what I'm
them.
hanging up. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what's on the door today. We'll play that challenge. But yeah, it's been a decent week for Clipper basketball. I think where we left off, obviously we had a few games after the All-Star break. The Clippers had a mixed batch of results where um, sort of injuries had meant that the lineups were not particularly consistent. There were some close games, particularly I think across all the games between now and All Star. We started off with the Timberwolves. Fortunately, had no Kawhi Leonard for this game, but it was a close one. It was a real close one. I think that was a shock to many. 94-88, the Clippers dropped this game, which is quite unfortunate, but it was close so late. And it was a really tight game. I think the Clippers defense really showed in this game. We obviously had guys like Darius Jones Jr., Chris Dunn, even Yanic, I think, got a bit of production in his 16 minutes and looked great. I thought the Clippers played well in this one. It was a 1 point game with 105 to go, but unfortunately just couldn't close it. And I think, as we've seen multiple times, when the Clippers don't really have a star guy on the floor, and the other team, for example, the Timberwolves in this case had Anthony Edwards. It's just how it goes. And Anthony Edwards um, took the win down the stretch. Ultimately, it was his play right at the end that got the Timberwolves the win, and it was really on a knife edge for the Clippers. And I think if they did have a bit more star power, and maybe had Kawhi Leonard this night, they would have got the dub. But yeah, Josh, what were your thoughts on this game? Um, yeah, any standout moments at all from you?
It's one of those funny ones, really, where as you reference, like generally, I guess historically for the Clippers, without Kawhi Leonard or without a Paul George or a James Harden, once upon a time, these games have always been difficult. But they are games that unfortunately we've had to watch in the past because of the injury records of those guys. So we're not strangers to seeing these kind of performances where it really is shorthanded. Obviously, we've had some miracle ones. Like you think back to, I think it was James Harden's Brooklyn Nets, actually, wasn't it? That, like I remember Wenyan Gabriel playing and stuff like that. Clippers legend, of course. And that was a huge comeback win for a really short-handed Clippers team. It never felt like it was really going to be the case in this one. Like the game never particularly got away from them either. And I think you've referenced that was testament to the defense and the defensive intensity in general. Like seeing Nicholas Batum being a starter felt like it sort of lent itself towards that because you aren't getting a ton of production out of Nicholas Batum this season. But the one thing he is still doing pretty well is defending at a high level, really. Besides
Yeah.
that, you have, still your best defenders in terms of Derek Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn around. I've been pretty impressed with the defense that I've seen from Jordan Miller this season, considering that was like something I thought was a real low point of his beforehand from seasons in the past. Then Kobe Sanders had some good defensive moments. I'd say still a little bit up and down, but of course still a rookie as well. Same goes for Yanic, really, both of them still kind of learning on the job. And I've deliberately left out Brook Lopez there because I think you see, all the issues with him in this game on both sides of the ball, really. Like the minute his shot volume has to go up and his shot diet has to increase, like the shot selection that he displayed in this game, like fading mid-range shots off 1 foot and stuff like that. It was just like pretty sickening to watch, to be honest. And like
Yeah.
Brook is a cool guy. He's someone I'm glad that the Clippers did pick up in the summer, but unfortunately, like in a basketball sense, it's just not worked at all. And I know he comes away with like a strange sort of 2 steals in this game, but again, like 6 rebounds for your 7 foot center is a little bit short for me. 3 turnovers, which again for your center is like kind of crazy considering he's usually just involved in pick and roll handoffs. Um, no blocks and only 8 points, 2 of 12 from the field. So yeah, really disappointing night for Brook. Another one where I just felt myself like lobbying for Yannick, but like a all round a kind of proud night for the Clippers really in terms of like buying into those young guys. Benedict Mathurin was actually the other guy that I kind of left off in terms of his defensive intensity, but he's bringing it. Like it's something that he came sort of heavily criticised for from the Pacers really was the lack of defensive intensity maybe or lack of defensive intelligence almost. But I think you've kind of seen that in the first few games for him as a Clipper, he's really been like in the passing lanes. And I actually saw like it's more of a conversation about Darius Garland really, but I saw a quote from Chris Dunn which kind of got me thinking about Benedict Mathurin really, where he was talking about how having a guy like him, as in Chris Dunn, like helps the perimeter pressure and it helps guys like Darius Garland then be in the right situations to get steals in the passing lanes, things like that. And I think you're seeing a bit of that from Benedict Mathurin. Really, it wasn't his best shooting night he's had as a Clipper, but he still comes away with 14 points because of how impressive he is at getting to the free throw line. And me and you, James, have
Yeah.
talked, a couple of times this season, but especially on last week's episode about how he can kind of replace the things that were missing from Norman Powell this season in terms of that energy, in terms of that sort of get to the paint or die trying mentality. And, sometimes
Yeah.
that is going to be a need to draw free throws, which is something that Norm was so good at. And even James Harden, who, of course, we've lost over the course of this season as well. So, really impressed by what we're seeing from Mathurin so far. And like, even though this was a down shooting night for him, it did still continue in this game. As you say, just one of them where the Clippers just kind of fell short because of a lack of offensive talent, and that's going to happen when you're without Garland and Kawhi. And obviously, we're going to come on to talk about because we haven't yet seen it in sort of a larger sample size. We're going to come on to talk about what Darius Garland can maybe bring to the Clippers, particularly offensively. What did you think about this game?
I think it was a great example of just the defensive intensity across the team and how, yeah, when you don't have your scoring guys outside of Mathurin, you are gonna struggle to put the ball in the net, especially in the crucial moments in the game. And I think that's what we found. And that was the difference between the two teams on the night. And I think that was a great point you just made about Mathurin. I was particularly impressed by his defensive intensity. I don't think the bar is particularly high for him because he doesn't come with a CV of being a defensive player from his time at the Pacers. But I think from what I've seen so far, he's bought into Jeff Van Gundy's system. He's putting his body on the line, and I've really liked his intensity. He's not maybe producing the high defensive numbers so far, but from sort of the eye test, I was pretty impressed, and I think he was one of the reasons why the Clippers could remain close because yeah, he's not a great defender, and teams will figure that out and start hunting him. But I think as he was the players he matched up against, he played his role and really sort of created that unit that kept the Clippers in this game for the long while. And Derek Jones Jr. was the highest scoring player on the Clippers, and I think that says it all really. I mean, Derek Jones Jr. is having a fantastic season. He's also having a great offensive season in terms of performance and scoring, but when he's your highest scorer, you've not you've not had a great scoring night. So yeah, I was impressed, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, to keep the Timberwolves quiet. And obviously, Anthony Edwards ultimately took over in the end, and sometimes you just need that star player to balance it out. And I think there are plenty positives to take from this game. I wasn't expecting a win when I saw the injury list. Obviously, the Clippers also continue to miss John Collins in this game, and I think having him on the floor as well could have been something that maybe even got the Clippers the win because he's been particularly reliable in terms of his ability to score the ball. But really, I think that the creativity obviously could have done with a Darius Garland in this game, or someone with the gravity of Kawhi Leonard to help the team generate more shots. I think Timberwolves in this game had far more second chance opportunities as well,
Yeah.
and even put the ball in the net and on those second chance opportunities too, which obviously I think was one of the differences on the night. Although the Clippers defense was great, they just weren't consistent enough in terms of their scoring, and that's just how it goes, as I mentioned. So yeah, I think positives to take from this game. You can only really judge the Clippers from being as available as they can be, and I think fortunately the last two games that we've had, so Pelicans and Warriors, we definitely got that, and I'm keen to dissect those a bit more because I think they've revealed a bit more about the Clippers and what they can do this season and even in the future. So. The Pelicans game was a great one to move on to. Obviously, that was a game that the Clippers could not drop, and maybe it's kind of impossible to drop at this stage. I think the Pelicans really are not trying to compete for anything serious. They've obviously gone through significant roster changes, and are clearly looking forward to the draft this year. Albeit, I don't even know if they own their pick, so that they're in
think
they're in a bit of
think it's
trouble.
going to
They're
the
in a bit of trouble.
Hawks. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's going to the Hawks, and obviously the Hawks are trying to win at the moment. I just want to say, by the way, one last thing on the Timberwolves. Sorry, before we do move on, it was nice to see Bones Highland again. I completely
Oh
forgot
yeah, yeah,
Bones. Completely forgot Bones played for them until that game, which is bad because I literally do an NBA podcast. But he's in the rotation now. He's cracked the rotation for the Timberwolves, which is nice. It was good to see him like giving everyone big hugs at the end and stuff. And yeah, I forgot about John Collins off the injury report too.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure that was his return to Intuit Dome. I'm sure that was his return to LA. I think he's faced up against the Clippers when we last played the Timberwolves. He had a pretty good game, but I think fortunately for the Clippers, it was a bit of a quiet night for Bones in this one. But great to see that he's fought his way into an NBA rotation because I think the talent was always there, and that was a guy that I was particularly excited about the Clippers acquiring way back when. I'm sure many Clipper fans was, and
Yeah.
had some pretty cool performances. And that's again like another player of like the Mathurin ilk where they are just bucket getters and just know how to score the ball. And yeah, big Bones Highland fan. Unfortunately, obviously didn't work out in LA, but great to see him getting an opportunity elsewhere in the league. Um, Back on Pelicans. So yeah, as I said, Clippers picked a dub in this one up at Intuit Dome, 137, 117. Complete dominant performance, really. As I said, that was more or less expected. I think John Collins being available for this game was pretty fun. He was pretty hot from the start. He had 15 points in 25 minutes. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard was back available, and that was good to see that obviously the sort of injury issues that he's been having and the rest is obviously doing him well, and the Clippers are going to do as well as his availability allows for. So that was pretty fun as well. And Jordan Miller, I thought was another standout on this night. It was pretty aggressive, 19 points, 8 assists, which I thought was great to see Jordan Miller adding sort of that side to his game. Obviously, he's been, I think, far more of a scoring threat as of late, but 8 assists, I'm not sure if that's a season high, but pretty good output as well, particularly as the Clippers didn't have Garland back for this game. I saw some reports that suggested he would be suiting up for this game, but it was actually the Warriors game where he made his debut, which we'll get on to in a second. But yeah, no Darius Garland. I think this was a back-to-back, so it kind of made sense that maybe he wouldn't suit up for this one and would suit up for the Warriors, which obviously meant far more in terms of standing, in terms of difficulty of matchups. So understandable why he sat this one out. But great to see John Collins back, and I think showed what a great option he can be for the Clippers, and hope that he can become available more consistently going forward. He wasn't able to play the Warriors game, but great to see him coming out and really dominating this one. What were your thoughts on the Pelicans game, Josh? Because I know this is one that you've caught up on and you've had a keen eye on during the week.
Yeah, like just really impressive for kind of all the reasons that the Clippers have been impressive over this little stretch. And I guess as they've got younger over the season as well, like the things you've wanted to see from young guys, which is, as you say, like Jordan Miller being aggressive. It was interesting hearing on the broadcast, Brian and Jim sort of talking about the fact that the coaching staff had acknowledged that Jordan Miller was having a bit of a shooting slump, and they've told him to just like plug on and manage his way through it almost. And this felt like the game where it really paid off, as you say, that level of aggressiveness and ability to get to the paint, really, which I'll keep harking back to. It is a thing that James Harden and Norman Powell brought in abundance, really, and is a thing that we can't be going without now, just because those guys aren't on the team. Like, I don't think it's something that Darius Garland brings a ton of that much. I remember Donovan Mitchell sort of that backcourt pair and being the one who was more prepared to get to the paint, and actually Darius Garland kind of left a little bit wanting in that sense. So having a guy like Jordan Miller off the bench, having a guy like Bennedict Mathurin, who I presume, at least in this iteration of the Clippers, is going to keep coming off the bench on the basis of this game. Like, having those guys is completely invaluable. And again, like, Bennedict Mathurin didn't necessarily do great from the free throw line in this one. He didn't even really have a great sort of field goal percentage in this one, but Jordan Miller did. Jordan Miller got to the free throw line 11 times, sort of highlighting that aggressiveness, as you said. So, yeah, that was great to see from him. Another big Kobe Sanders game, and like the big Kobe Sanders games are coming at like funny times, really, this season. Like, this one just came in garbage time, but you go 3 or 4 in garbage time. Sometimes it's just nice with a rookie to see like shots falling for him, really. We get to see Isaiah Jackson and Cam Christian in garbage time as well. Nice to just be in garbage time. Like, the thing I kept thinking while watching this game was, we'd obviously done our predictions. I think we'd done it for a bank of 4 games on the last podcast, so we kind of
Yeah.
both agreed that we'd go 2-2, obviously including the Pacers game that's happening tonight as we record. And this was the one that we were expecting the Clippers to pick up, and it was just a wire to wire win, and like really comfortable in that sense. And you get to the point where it's garbage time, and as much as it's nice that the Clippers keep a lot of games close, on the basis that like the Clippers have always then got a chance to win games, and maybe the worst team in on paper going into it, or the worst team over the course of the game. It's also quite nice when like they are comfortably the better team on paper, comfortably the better team on the night, and just blow a team away. And there's not really like any sort of weaknesses I don't think you can pick in that game, besides Matherin's maybe sort of shooting slump there. John Collins, the shooting splits don't necessarily leap off the page, but again, you say first game back, and I have to apologise to John because I didn't include him in those sort of scoring options when talking about what was missing from the Timberwolves game. But he very much is up there as a second or third or fourth option, at least, with Mathurin and Garland in the door now. Like, John Collins is going to be expected to rise from fourth to second in that ranking on any given night as well, because Kawhi Leonard is the bona fide star on this team, but really there's a hair's width between John Collins and Mathurin and Garland in terms of production, and it might just depend on the game state in terms of who turns up. So great to see John Collins back. He obviously misses the second game of the back-to-back, but I presume that's just injury management, and it seems like he is going to be back for the Pacers game tonight. Another great Derrick Jones Jr. game. Like, we can't sort of underestimate that. I'm glad that you pointed that out in the Timberwolves game before too, because he's been relied upon in the last few weeks to up his production in terms of scoring, and he's absolutely come to the party on that. So yeah, a perfect game, really, I would say, from the Clippers' point of view, even in terms of guys they got back, loads of things that were just reassuring, and then it sets the foundation, I think, for what happens the next night too.
Yeah, it was complete dominance from minute one. The Pelicans didn't lead the entire night, and I think these are the games that the Clippers usually drop. And the Pelicans have been a little bit of a bogey team for the Clippers over recent seasons. But this is one where the Clippers just had pretty much everyone other than Garland available, and it was just sheer dominance. They shot pretty well from beyond the arc as well, which was great to see. I feel like the three ball dropped for everyone except Kawhi Leonard. He only shot one of seven on the night, but the Clippers ended up shooting 17 of 36. So yeah, guys like Kobe Sanders. Still thinking about Kobe Brown. Kobe Sanders, Nicholas Batum, Derrick Jones Jr., Brook Lopez all had really, really good shooting nights from beyond the arc, and yeah, it was just one of those where the Clippers just had to show up, put on their best performance, and were easily going to get the dub 9 times out of 10. I was pretty impressed with Jeremiah Fears for the Pelicans. I thought he had a great shooting night, and clearly they've got some decent young players who can build around. I know I made almost a slight error at the start. I don't actually know what the Pelicans are doing right now in terms of their season because obviously they're not good enough to get into the play-in, but they don't own the draft pick this year. I don't know if they have another first round pick, but they're in sort of a bit of a limbo period, which is great for the Clippers because, like I said, they often do come around to haunt the Clippers. No matter how well or how bad the Pelicans are doing, they always seem to get one off. And yeah, it was even great to see DeAndre Jordan on the floor as well. And shout out to DeAndre for obviously still playing at obviously his age and stage in his career, and that was great to see. But to be honest, nothing else particularly jumped out to me in this game. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to talk the Warriors game because that was, I think, the most enjoyable out of the three. Unless you've got any more thoughts on the Pelicans game, Josh.
No, yeah, like you say, good to see DeAndre Jordan. I don't know if you saw his like tribute to Chris Paul on Instagram as well, but that was like really
Yeah.
nice and some sort of funny nostalgic Clippers moments while we got the nostalgic Clippers jerseys hanging in the background. Thought it was important to highlight that. Like I've never seen that video of when him and Blake Griffin get the call that Chris Paul's joining the team. Like that's just incredible because I kind of
Mm.
like it's just before my time of supporting the Clippers. So like seeing how that came together was really nice. Seeing DJ back in the building as a starter as well, like only 11 minutes as a starter.
Yeah.
As you say, the Pelicans, I think, are just kind of figure stuff out, trying to figure stuff out at the moment. Like they've got a good young core there. A few guys who are like on the fringe of things. Like it's weird seeing Jordan Poole getting coach's decision DMPs in the last few games, but like maybe they just don't think he fits in terms of the long term vision. They've got a lot of guys like Jeremiah Fears, like you said, Derek Queen, who's come out of the draft this year as well. Two really impressive individuals. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them sort of lean more into that side of things. DeJounte Murray's had a couple of things like hanging over him really this season and some quotes recently that have, not gone down particularly well. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Pelicans kind of, make more of a push next season to move off those guys. I think part of the reason that they didn't necessarily get rid of those vets this season is because, yeah, as I say, that they're in like a three-way pick swap with Milwaukee and Atlanta, but they get like the worst pick of that basically.
Right.
So it'll be the Hawks pick, I believe, and the Hawks will get the best pick of that. So that will likely be the Pelicans pick at this stage unless the Bucks continue to free fall. So yeah, strange sort of season for them, but happy to move on to the Golden State Warriors, who I'll be honest, I was just happy when I saw their team lineup come out because I was like second night of back to back. If Steph plays, like it's a wash. But as we're going to come on to talk about, it was better than that.
Yeah, it was a fantastic performance in the end for the Clippers, but it was a bit of a struggle, I think, to start with. Watching sort of the first two quarters, it was a strangely close game, sort of littered with turnovers and mistakes. To be honest, mostly on the Clippers side, but I also felt like the Warriors maybe just didn't have the right personnel on the floor to sort of take advantage of that. Obviously, they are currently missing Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, and I think there's definitely a great opportunity for the Clippers to maybe even sort of leapfrog the Warriors in the standings. Obviously, they are, I think, just a handful, maybe even two games or 1.5 games now behind the Warriors, and obviously it would be great to grab the eighth seed. I don't think there's any chance that they get higher than that, just given the games remaining, the teams that are above them, but also obviously the trades and moves that they made the trade deadline. I think there's a great opportunity to secure the eighth spot now that the Warriors are, like I said, missing their two most star players. And I felt this game had a weird like energy and almost like playoff feel. And I don't know if it was like obviously there's probably not really an opportunity unless the Warriors slip even more for them to meet in the play-in. But I felt it was that kind of game. I don't know if it's just like if Steve Kerr and Ty Lue just sort of relished their matchups together because obviously they know each other well. Obviously, they've coached with Team USA, and it just had that feel where the Warriors in particular are coming out with a lot of defensive intensity, and I thought they were putting the Clippers under a lot of pressure, and I think the Clippers gave it back equally so. But in the end, the Clippers ended up taking this one, but it took them a while to sort of turn the tide because the Warriors sort of led this game for the large portion of the match. And yeah, there was seven lead changes on the night. The Clippers only really took a short lead in the first quarter, and then not again until the fourth quarter, in which they came with an absolute resurgence. And I think in the end, the Warriors just couldn't live with them. I think the Clippers just gave them far too many opportunities in the first half, really, where there was just a lot of turnovers, and a lot of carelessness with the ball, and we're just not really getting punished for it by the Warriors. And I think the Warriors just allowed the Clippers to hang in there. And in the end, because other than John Collins, they had almost a full strength side. The quality just shined through, particularly with Kawhi Leonard. But I thought this was a fun game, and I really enjoyed the second half. The first half, as I mentioned, was a bit of a tough watch, but the Clippers ended up taking this one 114 to 101, and it was the Darius Garland debut. I feel like we should probably spend a decent proportion of the remaining podcast talking about Darius Garland, because obviously the trade was made weeks ago now, and obviously we haven't seen anything of Darius Garland because the Clippers felt that his the toe surgery that he had in the off season maybe hadn't been fully looked after or fully healed, and they wanted to give him some time before coming back, and I felt that was the right strategy. I think Garland even came out after the game talking to reporters saying that sort of thanking the Clippers staff for like the treatment and obviously the time to recover, and he said in particular like the medical staff had been fantastic with him. So that's great to hear as well, because we know the Clippers have bad histories with injury and injury management. So I don't know if they've just sort of learned some lessons, but obviously they've got sort of some of the most advanced medical facilities in the NBA, and it's great to see them putting them to use. And glad to hear Garland feels looked after, because it's a big transition from him leaving Cleveland, where he was drafted, to move to a new team. That's obviously something he's not gone through before. So great to see he's settling in. I think he definitely struggled sort of in his sort of early minutes with the team, but I think that was to be expected. Like he's obviously been out for a little while. He definitely hasn't been at his best this season, and obviously still is sort of managing that issue he's having with his toe. He had 5 turnovers on the night, and I think there was a particular period where it just felt like every time he got the ball, it was going to result in a turnover. But I think that confidence grew. The team were not losing confidence with him. They kept trusting him with the ball, and I think there was some real shining moments from Darius Garland on the night. I wouldn't read too much into the stats sheet, and I think if anything, the 12 points in 23 minutes, given 5 turnovers, like I was pretty impressed. And I think it was more his actions that maybe didn't always lead to a bucket, or maybe even lead to an assist. But I think his speed, his quickness, his ability to collapse the Warriors' defense, which I think on the night was well organized, and like I said, Steve Kerr definitely brought the intensity when facing Ty Lue. That definitely opened up the Warriors on occasion, and I'm excited to see more of it. I don't think we saw enough from Garland to obviously really judge him this early, but I thought given the timeout, given the issues that he's been having, it was a good performance. And yeah, like I said, there were just particular moments that really intrigued me, particularly that like his speed, his quickness, ability to get out and transition was really fun, and excited to see how the Clippers use him. I don't know how long this stint off the bench is going to last for. I imagine it will last for the next few games. It appears that he will likely suit up tonight against the Pacers, which is great to see. This is not just a one and done for Garland. Like he is back. He's in the rotation, and I assume he'll continue to come off the bench. And he even mentioned in his post game that he's happy with that. So yeah, excited to see more. What did you think of Garland's debut, Josh?
Yeah, good. As you say, like, probably not a whole lot you can read into it really in the sense of like his on-court play. I mean, like for a start, when I saw the Warriors lineup drop, I was thinking it was going to be a Clippers win, like in whichever way it came,
Yeah,
and it was obviously a really slow start to the game for the Clippers. You're completely right to mention that, but I think that's also to be expected on the second night of a back-to-back, and when the Clippers even though they were able to hook guys from that Pelicans game in the end, like they had their starting five sort of as it would be without Darius Garland. And so, there were a lot of guys there who exerted a lot of energy, back to back with travel as well, because obviously they went over from Intuit Dome to Chase Center. So kind of not surprised that it was a little bit of a slow start, but I felt like kind of justice was served in the end, and I mean that in the sense of just how much better the Clippers were on paper. Like the Warriors do still have guys like Al Horford and Draymond Green out there who are
yeah,
really good veterans, but like a lot of those young guys for the Warriors are guys that have not necessarily been fancied really this season. Like it's probably only Pat Spencer of the whole lot, and he's also not particularly young because I think he spent all of his time at college. It's only Pat Spencer that's like really impressed of the guys who have played there this season. Pods has had a bit of a down season for them. Melton, whenever he's played, has looked relatively good, but is just still plagued by injuries, and he wasn't particularly good in this game for Golden State in an offensive sense. Moses Moody again is one of those guys, probably similar to Pods, really, who like they used to be high on, and this season has really like taken the wind out of those sails. I was quite impressed with Ju Santos. Like he was probably the one I came away from it being like, oh, I see something with him for the future of the Golden State Warriors. Nate Williams, I don't know if he's on like a 10-day or something. He's literally only played 2 games for the Warriors, so I don't know if he's the kind of guy who's going to stick around or whether that's just a kind of temporary thing. Oh no, he's on a two-way, so only just signed a two-way contract in February, so I don't know how much of Nate Williams we'll necessarily see in the future, but we're obviously going to see a lot of Darius Garland in the future as Clippers fans, and that is really exciting to me because he seems like he like just really wants to be here. Like I don't know if you caught the post game that he did,
yeah,
sort of on the court with Lauren Rose and after the game, and he just seems so excited, like excited for the win, excited to be here in LA, excited to like be around his new teammates now and be back out there on the court. And that they are all really positive signs for me. And as you say, it was a little bit of a slow start to the game for him and he eventually grows into it. But I kind of don't want to read too much into what he did on the court because for one, I think this is probably one of the only few games he's going to be coming off the bench. So he's not going to have to necessarily figure out that specific role that he had in this
no,
game. He's going to play more than 23 minutes or just shy of 23 minutes once he does get into the starting lineup. So again, like some of these things I think should just iron out, like being able to play alongside Chris Dunn as a starter, I think will help him out a lot. Again, like going back to that quote of Chris Dunn about the perimeter pressure, like it's the big difference, I think, from him playing alongside Donovan Mitchell is that Donovan Mitchell was the guy on that team, but then because Donovan Mitchell is being the guy in an offensive sense, if you're in the backcourt with Donovan Mitchell, you kind of have to be the guy defensively. And obviously,
yeah,
like at the size that Darius Garland is, and even like, the defensive tools that he doesn't necessarily possess makes that job incredibly hard for him. Whereas you go into a backcourt suddenly with Chris Dunn, who for my money is still one of the best point of attack defenders in the NBA, even though the Clippers have had obviously a season of two halves, but a pretty disappointing season. Chris Dunn is still right up there with the best point of attack defenders. So having a guy like Darius Garland next to him, I just think is going to be, an incredible boon for the Clippers, really. And I'm so excited to see how that comes together over time and how, like, Garland is just able to, settle into that role and really rise to that because I think there's going to be, so much more to come from him. Really excited to see that, to see more of him, to see more of this, like, excitement of him being a Clipper because that's kind of what we want, really. Like,
yeah,
all the stuff around Chris Paul and all the stuff around even like James Harden, as much as we all still love James, like, the kind of rumors as it first started where, oh, it's another team that James requested out of and stuff like it's just quite nice to have guys that like definitely want to be here and we don't even have to question if they wanted to be here or if they didn't. And I understand James's reasons for not wanting to be here if he didn't. It's obviously just, for himself and for money reasons, really, as much as anything, for championship contention reasons. But it's just really nice to, have his replacement be a guy who is absolutely loving being in LA, someone who you can see leading this next core of the Clippers alongside Benedict Mathurin, who I thought had a better game in this one they did against the Pelicans. And just, yeah, loads again to be excited about. Really liked Yanic Niederhauser's minutes. Once again, didn't like Brook Lopez's, but I kind of skipped over that he was quite good against the Pelicans, so I should at least just give him that because I've given Brook a lot of stick this season, and it's no
Yeah.
disrespect to him as a fella, as I say, 'cause I think he's a great fella. I just think he is a slightly washed NBA player now. So yeah, loads again to like, particularly a lot off the bench. Another great Jordan Miller game, which is good to see, especially doing that like twice in a row on back-to-back nights as well. Just loads to like from this Golden State Warriors game, and loads that you can see that the Clippers can build around in terms of that morale and in terms of guys that are going to be a part of the next generation of the Clippers.
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting stepping stone that the Clippers can build off, and I think that starts with having Darius Garland back. And I think this was the game that the Clipper fans were really looking forward to because obviously he is the piece that we ultimately acquired for James Harden, who's obviously been such a big part of this team and been another player who's obviously spoke for his love of the organization. So to feel like we're getting a talented player back, but also a player who seems like he is soon going to fall in love with the team that we've all fallen in love with as well is really great to see. And yeah, I thought you made a great point about Chris Dunn and he was definitely sort of paying his respect to Chris Dunn after the game, and how much he enjoyed playing with him. And I think that's just going to add another aspect to his game, and he's going to see him sort of take a level up. I think for both players, really. I think obviously Chris Dunn is going to relish having a scorer and a ball handler next to him because a lot of that load has been on him, particularly over the last few games where James obviously hasn't been on the team and Garland's been out. So I can definitely see them working really well together, and I'm excited to see how Tlu sort of organises some of these lineups, particularly over the next few games. I think, like you mentioned, I don't think his role on the bench is going to be something he needs to get used to for long. I don't know, if it's going to be more of a short-term thing, just whilst he's on a minutes restriction. We'll just sort of see where they go from here. But obviously, we'll get another look at that tonight against Indiana. And yeah, really excited to see more of Darius Garland. I think the intention more than anything was the thing to take away from this game. Obviously, the turnovers were not fun, but I think expected. But I think he had some great flashes, and I'm just really excited to see more. And to be honest, and I think we've touched on this a little bit. Like I'm excited to see him with John Collins because, like I mentioned, this is a guy who's going to collapse a lot of defenses, and I think he's going to elevate John Collins's game as well. We saw what James Harden did for John Collins, and obviously John is someone who started the season slow, but is starting to come into his own a little bit. So I'm excited to see him back on the floor and how he matches up with Darius Garland, and how Ty Lue sort of manipulates some of those lineups to sort of include both of them, because I think that could be really fun. And we're definitely going to see a lot of lobs. We're going to maybe see a bit of a lob city back because there was definitely some fun lob attempts to Yanic in this game that I really enjoyed. And yeah, I think it was another dominant performance from Yanic. We don't have to spend too much on it because I know we touched on it last week. But yeah, if you haven't bought your Yanic kind of Niederhauser stocks, then buy now because they're rising. I definitely felt like he's getting a little bit more attention, particularly on social media. For some reason, I decided to watch this game with sort of the national broadcast. I don't usually do that, but I think the commentators on the broadcast for Peacock were pretty impressed with Yanic. They hadn't seen too much of him, and I saw multitudes of posts across numerous NBA accounts after sort of praising Yanic's performances this season. I think this was one of those that really didn't go unnoticed. Obviously, 4 blocks. It was a bit of a block party out there. There was one in particular that I really liked. Was a bit of a chase down block, which sort of led to an outlet pass to a dunk. I think it was for Mathurin. So yeah, I'm really loving Yannick Ball at the moment. Yeah, I've invested all my stocks in Yannick Ball, and I'm excited to see more. And yeah, this was another great game for him. I mean, I'm excited to see him take on more challenging bigs, because obviously in this game, he was up against like the experience of Al Horford and Draymond Green, but there are more challenges to come for Yannick, which we'll see down the line. But yeah, really excited to see more of Yanic. But Chris Dunn was the one I wanted to focus on because, as I mentioned, Garland was obviously relishing the opportunity to play with him and really enjoyed playing with him in this game. But you have to correct me on the timing of this, but I don't know if this was after the game, but this definitely came out yesterday. Kawhi Leonard told Joey Lynn, obviously one of the great Clipper reporters in the media, that he thinks Chris Dunn should be in the all defensive first team this season. It was sort of watching the clip back. It was fairly unprompted. Like it wasn't as if Joey sort of came out and said, "Oh, like, what do you think of Chris Dunn's chances of getting all defensive team this year?" Like, I think Joey had just asked him about his thoughts on Chris Dunn lately, and Kawhi obviously suggested that he thinks he should be first team all defense. He said he's been great all year, even last year. He's not sure what the requirements are, and he knows that he didn't make it last year because of minutes or something like that. But hopefully, he's hitting those minutes because he's been playing a whole lot this year, and he said for sure going to get a first team or second team. I think he's for sure the way I've been seeing him play since last year and this year, and obviously that's like great praise from obviously one of the game's all-time best defenders. Like I think on the night in particular, Chris Dunn had a particularly impactful game. Obviously, he had 16 points, two steals, seven assists as well. Just fantastic, and he brought that defensive intensity. And I think to get that kind of praise from one of the star players on the team, unprompted, like I said, not something that he was asked about in particular, but I think just goes to show. And I don't see a reason why he can't make it. I think he's still particularly underrated across the league, which is probably the one thing that isn't gonna get him the first team. And I often do think the voting with this, and we've seen it with Zoo last year when he had a great defensive performance, where it was only sort of towards the vote that the momentum started to shift to, okay, maybe he could get that vote. But yeah, I still think his like marketability isn't there, but I do think he's in the running for maybe a second team vote because he's just been unbelievable and continues to be. He's one of the best defenders or best point of attack defenders in the NBA for anybody his size. Like, yeah, just continues to be fantastic and just gives the Clippers an opportunity to win games on a nightly basis, even if he's not producing offensively. So, yeah, Josh, I'm going to ask you, what do you think about Kawhi's comments and whether you think Chris Dunn can be on an all defensive team at the end of the season?
Interesting, to be honest. Like I was trying to think of guys in the backcourt that I would say have had better defensive seasons than Chris Dunn. Like when I say that Chris Dunn is one of the best point of attack defenders in the NBA, like I genuinely do believe that. But I would say at the start of the season he wasn't having a great defensive season. So
Yeah.
there probably are like maybe two to three guys who've had all round better defensive seasons than Chris Dunn, but like all NBA, sorry, all defensive second team, I should say, in the NBA. Like I kind of don't see why not. That to clue Kawhi up in case he's listening to this. You need to have appeared in at least 65 regular season games, and within those 65, it says the player must log at least 20 minutes in at least 63 of them. While Chris Dunn has played in 60 games for the Clippers this season, and he's only played less than 20 in two of them, so he'll be well on track to be a qualifier for that. So as you say, it'll probably just come down to whether he gets a sort of popular vote at the time or whether he is a popular vote among fellow players. And it seems to me like he does kind of get the respect of fellow players. Like I don't think the Clippers are one of those franchises that are massively fancied and are constantly in like the forefront of players' minds. Really, like people are enjoying Intuit Dome this season, and the All-Star game was at Intuit Dome. So I kind of wonder whether those things have a little bit of like a popularity kick onto Chris Dunn, albeit Chris Dunn obviously wasn't
Mhm.
at All-Star weekend, so he's not necessarily going to be the guy that's fresh in people's minds there. But yeah, I'll be interested to see if he makes it in. As I say, I can probably name two to three guys, but I might start to struggle. I think if I'm going towards like five to six, because that's just how good I think Chris Dunn is in terms of a backcourt defender. So be really interested to see. It's funny when Kawhi comes out and says these things, because obviously like we were saying about Kawhi's quote on us being out of championship contention last week and saying like sometimes he's just too much of a straight shooter, and we can kind of make a headline out of something that he's probably not expecting to make a headline out of just by being uber honest. And this is one of those times where I'm a bit like, I wonder if Kawhi actually believes that, or if it's like because he is biased because he constantly plays around this guy, or whether it's just because like no, he's my teammate, so like I'm going to publicly back him, even if I don't necessarily believe that there are, you know, there are not sort of two or three defenders that are better than him in terms of guard positions this season. I believe the all defensive team will have positions. I've not seen anything to suggest that it's going to be positionless, so I could
No.
be wrong on that maybe, but yeah, even if it was, I imagine that all defensive teams are still going to have big guys in it. So, um, yeah, like it's definitely a strange one from Kawhi. Apparently, they have adopted a positionless format for all defensive teams. So,
Okay.
maybe we'll just have a five out lineup with Chris Dunn at the five in the all defensive first team. That would be nice.
Yeah, I think I mean, to be honest, I didn't realize it was positionless. I guess that's kind of unfair to the smaller guards because you know, with guards like Chris Dunn, like he's obviously had to find his niche in the game, which is obviously on the defensive side of the ball. And I think he spoke a bit about that after the Warriors game the other night, in that he had to sort of carve out his niche. If you're a real Clipper fan, you'll know that he obviously did spend like a little bit of time in the G League with the Clippers, and has obviously just had to find his role in the league, and that started with his position on the Utah Jazz team, and has made a name for himself a little bit there, being an absolute disruptor on the floor, but a guy who can be relied upon like offensively has obviously sort of grown some of his shot making, particularly from beyond the arc. But his game is all in on his defensive ability, and I don't think there's many others in the league other than maybe like a Alex Caruso is probably like the best, or yeah, obviously he's got a different kind of role in on the Thunder these days, but there are not many better in the league than Chris Dunn. So I'm glad to see Kawhi giving his flowers. I don't think from memory and Kawhi's presses, I'm not used to him sort of giving his flowers in this way in terms of like nominating players for awards like that. So I'm going to take that as like pretty high praise, and something that he seemingly believes in, and obviously has the CV to back it up in terms of what looks good from the defensive end. Obviously, that's a guy who's been on multiple defensive teams, so really really great to see. I would love it if he got one. I'm not going to put my hopes on it because we were all rooting for Zoo to get that first team defensive vote last year, and obviously that didn't come. Although obviously I think he was one of the better defenders in the NBA, and again I think it just comes down to that like marketability. They're just some players that just get their name out there a bit more. And I think Chris Dunn, with obviously his role in the Clippers season in general, just like it hasn't been too much in the view of the national media. But I hope he continues to have nights like he did against the Warriors, put in big performances on national TV, and he'll soon garner that attention. And when obviously you've got star players like Kawhi coming out and saying those kind of things, like it's only going to boost your profile. And I think it's absolutely deserved. And I've loved Chris Dunn. Obviously, like you said, it wasn't the best start to the season. I thought he had better season last year, but he's been doing it for such a long period of time, like Kawhi said, that I do think he deserves the recognition, and it would be great to see, particularly for his journey. Obviously, he was a sort of late into the league and has really carved out his niche. So, yeah, excited to see more of Chris Dunn, and I'm really hoping that he does get that position as Kawhi mentioned. I want to turn attention to the forward look, to the next few games as the Clippers are playing tonight against the Indiana Pacers. We spoke last week about whether we would see Ivica Zubac, and it doesn't look like Zoo is going to be playing. I believe he is marked as out on the injury list for the Pacers. He hasn't played since we recorded last week. I do believe some of the reporters from the Clipper side mentioned that he won't be playing, but he will be there. So he's going to be in Intuit Dome, which is going to be a bit of an emotional return. Obviously, unfortunately, he's not going to be suiting up for the Pacers, and I guess kind of fortunately for the Clippers, because don't really want to be seeing Zoo on the opposition just yet. I don't think I'm ready for that. I don't think I'm ready to handle that emotionally. But we are going to see him on the wrong bench into it Dome, which is going to be hard to see. I think that from what I've seen, Kawhi Leonard and Darius Garland are listed as playing, but John Collins remains out His status is currently unchanged, and that's due to his the neck strain that he's going through at the moment, which is continues to be unfortunate. It just feels like the Clippers just can't at the moment get a full team together because like I said earlier, I'm really excited to see how John Collins fits with Darius Garland, but we'll have to wait for that one. This should be one the Clippers win with ease. The Pacers obviously are going through that transitional period where obviously Halliburton is out for the season. I think there's more obviously interest just outside Zoo in the fact that there is obviously this draft pick for the end of the season where the Clippers obviously have pretty much a 50-50 chance at getting the Pacers pick. So um, winning this one shouldn't change anything. Yeah, I don't think anyone is really worried about that. It can't really decrease than less than a coin toss. So this should be one the Clippers win. I'd be shocked otherwise. But yeah, what were your thoughts on the Pacers game tonight, Josh? I'm assuming you're in sort of similar boat to me in terms of nothing but a win.
Yeah, same as you really, and same for you on the pick side of things, by the way. Like I don't think I want the Pacers to like start rapidly rising through the rankings, to be honest, and for that pick to, fall in the more comfortable range for the Clippers. Like I really like the top five of this draft, and if the Clippers can get that fifth pick by having it be a coin toss, then if it falls outside of that, I'm not necessarily sure that I want the Clippers to get that pick. Like I want it to be one of the top five guys, or I want
Yeah.
it to be a guy in 2030 or whenever it is that that pick conveys to. I think it's 2031, isn't it? And the other pick we've got is 2030. So quite happy to see the Pacers keep losing. Sad that it means that Ivica Zubac is practically like it's kind of looking like he's shut down for the season, which is, a strange position to be in. Rick Carlisle just keeps kicking the can down the road in terms of, talking about Zubac and his injury. Zoo's obviously played for the Clippers, so much already this season. It feels like whenever guys get shut down, and this is the problem with tanking, and I hope that Adam Silver is going to do something to kind of, quash some of this stuff in the summer, really. But you've got a guy who is, perfectly healthy there. Listen, I imagine all NBA guys carry knocks at points, and they may be the kind of things that you can do a sneaky little surgery on and say they're out for X amount of time or whatever if you really wanted to. But ultimately, like, I don't know about you, James. I'm 30 years old now. I feel like I'm injured every single day of my life. Like when I get up out of bed, my back's hurting, my knees are hurting. When I go for runs, I get shin splints. Like it's kind of just the way it is, and I'm not an elite athlete, so um, I kind of think like it's annoying to see a guy like Zoo shut down because it's annoying that we don't get to see him, in a Pacers uniform, sort of playing tonight. As you mentioned, he will be on the bench, so you'll imagine he'll still get that tribute video and stuff, and all of that will still be emotional. I'll be interested to see how much emotion he shows because he's quite like he's someone who's capable of showing happy emotion, I think, or maybe sometimes angry emotion, but I've very rarely seen him like sad or anything that kind of like goes outside of overexcited or angry. So. Yeah, I'd be interested to see how Zoo kind of reacts. But in terms of the game, like you say, I'm expecting it to be, a wash for the Clippers, really. I'd be very surprised if the Pacers really give us a good matchup in this one. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA. I don't think they'll finish
Yeah.
with the worst record. I think the Sacramento Kings will because they are one of the worst NBA teams that I've ever seen put together. The Pacers are still, a decent team, missing their best player and now missing, a couple of pieces on top of that. But yeah, expecting a big Clippers win. Shame to be without John Collins. I'd kind of hoped that there'd be some reversal in that injury report because it felt like he only missed the second night of the back-to-back because it was a back-to-back and that he could come back for this one, but it seems that's not going to be the case unless there is like a genuine like late scratch to this injury report. So
Yep.
yeah, like I'm looking at the Pace injury report now as well, by the way, and obviously Tyrese Halliburton's off it. Andrew Nemhard is questionable. Pascal Siakam is listed as questionable, although ESPN's got a status as out, so I'm not sure what that means. Same with Aaron Nesmith, listed as questionable, but they've got him as out. Obi Toppin is probable, so that would be quite nice to see Obi Toppin back on the floor. But then, as we mentioned already, Ivica Zubac out, so there could be a couple more players missing for the Pacers here. It might not be the most exciting spectacle, but I'll certainly be watching it back just for the Zoo tribute video, if nothing else.
Me too. And yeah, I'm certain there'll be a Clippers win tonight. And that's at Intuit Dome before they go on a two-game road trip. They'll be playing the San Antonio Spurs on Friday. I spoke a little about Yanic getting a bit more of a challenge, and there'll certainly be one here in this game if he's set to guard Wemby, because that will be interesting. And a great opportunity for him to test his skills against one of the obviously the rising stars in the NBA, and a reason why the Spurs are doing so well this year. And then they'll face the Memphis Grizzlies, just a short while behind the Clippers in the standings. I do think this is probably a game the Clippers are more likely to get a win at than the San Antonio Spurs, but obviously it is a back-to-back. It'll be interesting to see how they manage Kawhi Leonard, how they manage Darius Garland, who's obviously just come back from injury, whether we see John Collins in one of these games, whether they're going to go all in on trying to beat the Spurs, or they sort of accept the fact that obviously the Grizzlies, who've traded away a fair amount of their team, are going through a bit of a transitional period, and obviously not doing so great as of recent. Whether they sort of accept that they maybe can beat them a bit short-handed. So interesting to see how they play those two games out, and then they'll be heading back to Intuit Dome, where they'll be playing the New York Knicks. And I guess very likely we could get a podcast in next week before the Clippers play the Timberwolves again. That is again back at Intuit Dome. I'm going to go with a optimistic 3-2 over these next five games. I think they're going to drop the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks, but I see wins coming against the Timberwolves, Grizzlies, and definitely the Pacers tonight. I think if I had a more optimistic hat on, I'd go 4-1. But I do think that back-to-back is probably just at the wrong time for the Clippers with Garland coming back. But I definitely think they can nick one of those back-to-back games. Definitely winning tonight, as I mentioned. I think the Knicks might be a bit of a tough one for them, although they do have a little bit of a rest. So I wouldn't be surprised if they could get a win there. But the Knicks have been playing brilliant this year, and I think they're a great team. I think they're probably more likely to pick up that win than the Spurs game. But yeah, Timberwolves, just given how close that game was the other night, like I would be surprised if this game wasn't close. And obviously, if they have Kawhi, if they have Darius Garland, then obviously there are two great players that they didn't have the other night. So I'm pretty confident that the Clippers could pick this one up. But yeah, Josh, how optimistic are you after these next five games before we sit down and record again?
Yeah, this is a tough one. That Knicks game is back into it, isn't it? I always
Yeah.
hate that Google does that the different way around to how
Mm.
the NBA generally do it. Um, Go on, I'll be optimistic and say 3-1 as well. I do think they'll lose to the Spurs. By the way, like as much as I'm enjoying the Clippers ascent up the standings, like I want it to be clear that I want the OKC Thunder in the first round. I don't want the San Antonio Spurs. I just think the San Antonio Spurs would be matchup hell for the Clippers.
Yeah.
I would like the idea that even if we don't beat the Thunder, we can kind of kick a few shades of whatever out of them in that first round of the playoffs. I just like the idea of that matchup. I'd like the coverage around all of it. I'd like the Clippers to be a story going into the playoffs because I want more eyes to be on guys like Mathurin and Garland going into next season. People realizing how good those two guys can be.
Yeah.
You referenced with Yanic before as well, the national TV audience sort of getting onto him for the first time. So yeah, I do think we'll lose to the Spurs in this game coming up this week. I think we'd probably be washed by them pretty easily in the playoffs as well. So I want to avoid them at all costs. So a little loss to a team like them here and there, which either gets us into the eighth, but then we still lose to the Phoenix Suns, or keeps us in the nine, and then we can beat the Trailblazers and the Warriors to get there. Either way is good with me, Clippers. Make it interesting by all means. You always do.
Yeah, they will for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if those wins are the wrong way around, and somehow they manage to beat the Spurs, beat the Knicks, and somehow drop games to the Grizzlies. I won't say Pacers because yeah, I'll say it now, but then surprisingly they'll manage to win, and it'll be this typical Clippers game where miraculously the Pacers have won, given how undermanned they are, and obviously the whole draft pick situation. I don't think that's going to happen, but yeah, you never know with the Clippers. But I'm very excited to sit down and watch some of these games. I think Clipper basketball recently has been super fun. I've enjoyed this podcast. I've been enjoying some of the episodes we've been recording. Josh, I think the Clippers is definitely fun again. There's a lot to feel optimistic about, and great to sort of start the Garland era with lots to talk about, and these are definitely games where we're going to see some more of him. And I'm very excited for that, and I think there's some great matchups over the next week, which we can be excited for. But yeah, happy to wrap it up here. Thanks everyone for listening and watching this one. We'll hopefully be back again next week. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Champions League week next week, so this might have to be a Thursday night if possible, which will mean we'll hopefully be able to cover all five games, which might be nice. But yeah, we'll definitely try and put something out next week. Josh, remind everyone where they can come and see your work outside of your Clippers stuff.
Yeah, at jsexton24 across all socials. Me and Drew Lasker, who is an NBA on Amazon Prime analyst and a former pro basketball player himself, playing in British basketball for the Newcastle Eagles and the Plymouth Raiders, do an NBA podcast together called Crossover the Pond. So do go and check that out if you find yourself here as a Clippers fan, but someone who likes more general NBA talk as well. Then you don't mind my UK voice being over that, then that is good. But if you would prefer US voices, then Drew is from Texas, so you may well enjoy. I'm not sure how you find yourself here with me and James if you don't enjoy UK voices, but yeah, nice one as always to James for having me on, for keeping this Clippers community thriving over here in the UK with the Clippers UK page too. Because as you say, James, a very exciting time to be a Clipper. I love the Clippers just doing anything, and blowing this team up has made me just very excited, probably more than I anticipated it would.
Agree, 100%. Really optimistic at the moment. Really excited to watch more of this team. I think they're in a really fun moment, and yeah, really excited to record again next week with you, Josh. Thanks for your time, and thanks again everyone for tuning in. And yeah, go Clips, go.